You know, the phrase power to the people is taking on a whole new meaning when it comes to public housing here in New York.
Yeah, the New York City Comptroller is conducting 2 audits on NYCHA based on input from NYCHA residents. So this morning we are joined by Comptroller Brad Lander to talk all about this. So good morning to you.
Good morning, Dan and Hazel. Great to be with you guys.
So let's talk about this. 400,000 New Yorkers live in NYCHA housing, and these audits that you announced yesterday come after a series of these listening sessions that you held and that you began last summer. So the top complaints from residents were, no surprise, about safety and sanitation. So how do these 2 audits that you're initiating address those issues?
On safety, we actually launched an audit right away while we were out doing these surveys. We had every one of our auditors go out, and over the period of a week, we looked at every single entry door in every NYCHA building all across the city, and found that 40% of them did not lock or close properly, and followed up with NYCHA to say, okay, the base of safety has to be that your building entry door has to lock or close. And then after surveying 800 residents and all those town halls, we brought a resident audit committee together to say, okay, where should we go next? And what they said we should look at next is at contractors and whether there's any oversight from NYCHA to make sure repair work actually gets done, like whether those doors actually lock after the contractor goes to fix them, or whether a leak in somebody's apartment gets fixed, because residents experience they send a contractor out, nothing happens, and then that contractor still gets more work.
Right, and that's kind of what our Monica Morales does over and over again when she covers it for her Monica Makes It Happen series, right? Covering these stories of broken doors, as you know, broken elevators, lack of heat, and it just seems kind of a hamster wheel of like the same vicious cycle over and over again, right? So will the audit make a difference?
Look, this is why we're bringing residents to the table. And, you know, you point out a real challenge. People know there's been a problem with New York City Housing Authority repairs and safety and sanitation for years, and that it's gotten much worse. Controllers do audit after audit after audit. There's a federal monitor. Our idea of bringing residents to the table is that if we combine our audit power with their people power, that's the best shot we have to make change, alongside great reporting like mine.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it, though. When you think about how many complaints that are out there right now that have not been answered, that have not been fixed, people are going to want to know, how do you have the manpower to make this happen?
Yeah.
So we've got a great set of auditors. We've got an audit bureau of about 130 people in the Comptroller's office. Now, they have to audit every single agency once every 4 years, but still, we've got a great team that goes in, looks at the records, looks at the data. Was there oversight of those contractors? Was there consequences, or did they just get more contracts? So by bringing those resident voices to the table and then combining with our traditional audit power, digging in, not just being able to look and knock at the doors, but also get all the records and see what actually happened, we believe we'll be able to make some real change.
Yeah, of course. So, you know, we have Aixa Torres with us right now, joining us for this part of this interview as well, part of one of those resident committees that you are talking about. Good morning. How are we doing?
Good morning. I'm doing fine, thank you.
And so, you know, we're just talking to the Comptroller about the power of the voice of the people. So let's talk about some of the complaints you hear that you're able to bring to elected officials first and foremost.
Well, repairs, absolute repairs. The contractors, you know, we get complaints about RAD. So these 2 audits are like really important. And I'm very grateful to the Comptroller for listening to the resident leadership. We have had elected officials not listen to us, pass laws like the trust, even though the majority of the residents are against it. The majority of the residents don't even know what it is. And it has become our responsibility to educate them because they don't know. And he's been one of the few elected officials that has really listened to the voice of the residents in public housing.
Well, because there hasn't been a really good track record then with the city, you know, answering the call when so many NYCHA residents are asking for help. How optimistic are you that this audit, this whole system that's being put in place, is going to make a difference?
I am very optimistic because they're listening to the residents. Once upon a time, NYCHA was run by residents, for residents. And if you could Google it, if you didn't know this, there was a reserve in the billions of dollars, right? So we know how to run NYCHA. So when we're listened to, right, and our opinions are counted and we're part of the process, we know that we can run NYCHA The pandemic proved that to us. If nothing else, we were left alone, and we know how to run our communities.
Right.
We're leaders, and we care about each other, and that's how we managed to survive the pandemic and all the things that happened in it.
Right.
And so I'm very optimistic about this audit because it comes from the people.
Right.
From the residents.
Yeah, you brought that directly to the controller. So, so Mr. Lander, what actually happens? What happens next?
So now we'll go do these 2 audits. And what an audit involves is, in some cases, as we did with those doors, going out in the field, but a lot of times it's digging in on the records. And that's the case with both of these audits. So we'll be looking at a whole series of places where contractors were hired by NYCHA. What was the work they were assigned? What oversight was there? Did the work get done? We may then follow up with the residents to say, okay, NYCHA's records say the work was done. Can you show me a picture of whether it was or wasn't? Then we'll follow up and see were the contractors, based on whether their work got done well or not, rewarded additional NYCHA work, or were some who didn't show up and do the job told, we're not going to give you contracts again.
What if it wasn't? What if it wasn't done?
Well, if it wasn't done, 2 things will happen. One, that's what we'll report in the audit. Here's contractors that were rehired time and time again, and that shows a problem both with NYCHA's lack of oversight and with that contractor. And we'll make recommendations both for which contractors potentially should and shouldn't be used, but also for NYCHA systems. You know, there's obviously a lot more technology for following up with residents. You know, in most cases, you just wouldn't pay someone for the work until the work was done. But unfortunately, we see time and again that happens.
Real quickly, if there was wrongdoing, though, how will you make sure those folks are held accountable?
If there's criminal wrongdoing, then we work with both the Department of Investigation and prosecutors. The Comptroller's Office has done that in the past, and we team up and say, okay, if this is a case where there was criminal wrongdoing, there need to be prosecutorial consequences.
All right. Comptroller Brad Lander and NYCHA resident and tenant advocate Aixa Torres, appreciate you both being here this morning to talk about this, and keep us posted on it, okay?
Thank you.
Great to be with you.